For me, the meaning of my queendom is just a woman living in her true, sovereign, authentic power and living life so radically, authentically, and truthfully. And as a woman who knows herself, trusts herself, backs herself, and loves herself.
Welcome to the Crown Yourself podcast, where together we build your empire and transform your subconscious stories about what's possible for your business, body, and life. I'm your host, Kimberly Spencer, founder of crownyourself.com, and I'm a master mindset coach, best-selling author, TEDx speaker, known to my clients as a game changer. Each week, you get the conscious leadership strategies you need to help you reign with courage, clarity, and confidence so that you too can make the income and impact you deserve. Imagine this podcast as your royal invitation to step into your full potential and reign in your divine purpose. Your sovereignty starts here, and your reign is now.
Anna, it is such an honor to have you on the Crown Yourself podcast. And I just want to dive in because you have faced so much of what people fear: rejection on a massive macro level with the entire Australian media. You leap out of planes and you've been nearly killed by your ex-boyfriend. Yeah. So what do you fear now?
Oh, that is such a good question. And honestly, nothing. I feared what made me jump out of the plane, become a solo skydiver, was actually the next level for me. So I would love to, I'm not the gal that can sit here and say I'm completely fearless and I'm that badass. I was absolutely terrified of height. Still, there was an element of that always in my life. But I knew that the woman that I needed to become in this era of my life and iteration of self was never going to get there as who she was. And so to become her, I was like, I need to just go so big and face such like an enormous fear. And I couldn't think of a more audacious, wild thing to do than go and become a solo skydiver. So I booked it and I did it. But now that really changed my life. I forgot I did that. Like, people don't really talk about it. I don't really talk about it, but yeah, I solo skydive. But doing that last May and getting the amount of jumps under my belt I have now and continuing to do, nothing scares you. It really doesn't. I mean, businesses could fail. My ex could breach his VR, anything could happen. And it's like, nothing will compare at 15,000 feet to an airplane door being flung open. Truly, I think they're going like above 200 kilometers an hour, the sound of the wind. You've got a backpack with some fabric and string on your back and you leap. And yeah, so it really did change my life doing that. And now I do live, honestly, pretty fearless, if not completely fearless.
You're so open with sharing so much of your life and with building all four of your businesses now. Sheesh. What was the muse to be able to share all of it and to be so transparent and open?
It was so innate. This is such a beautiful conversation, by the way. I'm like, I've never really been like bang, bang. I'm like, no one's ever really brought this out of me before. And I love to have honest conversations. So
yay.
Yeah, thank you. What a space. What a beautiful space. It really was innate. I'd love to say there was this moment or this muse or this strike of inspiration, but I started, honestly, it was almost an accident. I started online on Instagram, I think it was like 12 years ago now, 13 years ago. And I thought it was a photo editing app. And so I was posting, thank God I'm not like a nude kind of gal. Because even then I was like in my early 20s, so could have been. But I honestly thought it was a photo editing app. This is like 13 years ago. And so I was just putting snapshots of my life up at that time. And then one day I got a comment somewhere and I'm like, what is this comment coming from? And, went online, it was Instagram. I'm like, oh my God, people can see your photos? Like, holy shit. And then I thought, well, that's cool. And at the time I was just about to fly to Europe with my now ex-husband. And I've just always been a natural storyteller. And so I started to tell the story of our troubles essentially at that time, and the honesty of it. I have always lived with radical honesty and radical truth in a sense. And I think that muse comes from, almost having a fight all my life since I was young. Like there's always been something that's come up. I just think that was my soul's contract. And so naturally began to tell the story of my life. And I have done that ever since through pictures and words and podcasts and companies. And yeah, I just think it is honestly very natural for me. People at the moment, like it's kind of a buzz thing in Australia anyway, and I love it. People are going, I'm going to pull, what do they keep saying? Like, I'm going to pull the veil down of my life and I'm going to show you more. And I'm like, what the fuck have you been doing what have I been following for 10 years then? Like, so I just find for me, not everyone has to do it. And I always say when I speak, take the fish, leave the bones, like take what lands and resonates. But for me, I know how I have had success across 4 different industries with 3 companies and, a business. So 4 businesses is because I live with that truth and I share the story of my life and I don't hide anything. And even, my ex almost killed me because I have unfortunately told that story recently. And that is a part of my life. And we can go here, we don't have to go here. But, even to that extent, as a powerful woman that's very well known here in Australia, that, I fell for a narcissist and I even, escaped that and there was violence in the end. But to stand in the truth of that even was important to me because that was a part of my life. And then it became part of my story, not my identity. And there's a very big difference.
I completely agree.
It became part of my story and it's the truth. And I think our stories heal one another. And when we can, own our story and love ourselves through that process, it's a Brené Brown quote, it's the bravest thing any of us can ever do. And so my commitment in my life is to continuously own my story and love myself through that process. And to share that online is just the natural gift and next step for me ultimately. So I think, it's natural. Like I said, it's almost a bit of medicine for me as well, to be honest. It's like, I get also because I think a lot of shame, like I think in all women as well, I work with only women, but I know with women, we hold so much shame relentlessly in our bodies. And for me, I'm like, I do all the work all the time, but I feel like with women, there is that hidden aspect. They don't say what they mean. They don't mean what they say. They're not always telling the truth with a firm no or a fuck yes or whatever that is for them in their life. And I think when you just show up, warts and all, like chaos and all, truth and all, whatever that reality is for you, whether it's I love to, I'm dancing one day, I'm a bad bitch the next in my companies, the next I might be throwing myself out of a plane, the next I might be, talking about the love of my life, the next I might be sharing, the vulnerable truth of, the chaos of my narcissistic ex, but it's all a part of my story. And there's no shame for me because I'm not trying to hide any part of me. And I always say, because I am pursued, right? When you live with this much audacity, media have pursued me in the past, haters still pursue me. And I laugh to my partner now, my beautiful king. I always say, he's like, no one can come at you because they get the truth from you. And I'm like, yeah. So I think that's that shame piece for me. It's not hiding behind anything. It's not feeling like I can't show a certain aspect of myself, like the sensual side, which many CEOs, for example, I've founded 3 big global companies now, and I love to get down and grind on the dance floor in heels sensually every single week. And I love to share that part of me. And there's no shame in that. And I think as a woman, I love to be the pillar of possibility in all that. So I hold no shame. I'm not ashamed that, I run companies and I also put my fishnets on and go grind on a dance floor on Thursday and I'll share it. Like yes and both and yes and all. So that's the shame piece for me.
I love it. I just was at a podcast conference the other month and put on my patent leather Spanx and was Posh Spice because it was 90s themed and was totally rocking it out on the dance floor. And I had some people come up to me and they're like, your husband's not here. Like, what's going on? And I was like, my husband fully trusts me in and loves me being fully expressed. And he knows my boundaries. And so there is no worries there for him or for me, because I also have some pretty strong boundaries around how I allow people to treat me. And I think that that's such a beautiful thing. I love how you set those boundaries. I'm curious, especially as a mother who I do share a lot of my life on the interwebs, but there are certain things, especially with my kids, that I am much more protective of our privacy, because as far as, you know, I know you've had experience with haters coming after you and having to move multiple times, that experience of basically doxing, right?
Yeah, they've doxed me. And there's criminal, like if people are listening and they're like, holy shit, and we can go in there. But I've let them go to the extent now where I've got enough evidence to, like, I'm going to make an example of my particular haters nationally in Australia, because that's not okay. Like, you know, doxing and things like that. But yeah, that's absolutely happened in my life. It's wild. And that's a boundary, but that, like, just, you know, that's a boundary. I'm now, I've let that happen. And people, you know, this is what I want to say, like, around this conversation and boundaries. Number one, I love that you said, you know, with my kids, I have made it so clear that I do share all of my life and I plan on having babies, but my babies won't be on my social media for sure. And I respect my best friends, all their kids are. So there's never any judgment in a cell of my body. So I love every woman's decision and why she makes it, as long as she knows why she is making it. And for me, when I choose to have my babies, and I've spoken to my beautiful partner about this, who he's the one I'm planning on, or we are. He's like, I respect that and I love that. But I had to have that conversation because I said, look, you know, I do share a lot of my life and I do put myself out there a lot. And there is a lot of eyes on my stuff every single day. And because of the darker side of the internet, and I don't give it any, you know, I'm very conscious of my thoughts and what we, you know, our words become our world and all of that. But also there is an insidious side to life, of course. And that's my boundary on it. So I will choose at that point to not share my children, and they can decide when they're older what they wish to do. But then, yeah, with haters as well, like if anyone's coming under criticism or fire, like I have so unbelievably, I always say so many people will give you opinions, like just leave it, don't give it attention. And I never do ever online, but I've now quietly behind the scenes, you know, begun criminal proceedings essentially. And other people close in my life have said, oh, but isn't this giving it energy? And I'm like, no, this is me now putting up such a firm boundary that hopefully, and I trust, and it absolutely will be an example for a nation. So there's that dark and light to life. There's that dark and light to love. There's a dark and light to living, like all the things. And I think as long as we live within our boundaries, and we know our boundaries and we hold our boundaries, then we can live a beautiful life.
I think the hard part about boundaries is sometimes you don't know where they are until someone bumps up against them and you're like, oh, that's the boundary. Which one was the hardest boundary that you bumped up against that you realized was your boundary?
Probably this one. Fundamentally this one. Really, like allow, like, and I'll try and make it relative. I think the relatability I can give to listeners. So when I say this one, it is to do with the relentless attention and stalking almost pretty much on my life. And it sounds so wild. It's like, how is she this? But I did speak up for a nation for 2 years and got so much media attention. That is where it has come from. But it has continued. But it was to know that. It was to say, well, do I, because I live and breathe by, you know, think like you love yourself, speak like you love yourself. So for me, holding that space and that boundary of love, of possibility, of hope, of like absolute just divinity and power on your life. But then there is that side of my life at the moment where I could not give it attention, and I don't. But it got to the point where I was like, actually, I could make they're bumping now. Like they're bumping, and I have to make the decision of if I say namaste or fuck you. And it's a fuck you from me. So I think with the relatability,
it can be a combination of both too. In a way,
always.
It's like a loving parent saying, you know, no, you're not getting ice cream, and timeout. Like we're putting you into a criminal court timeout.
I was just like, man, it's such a beautiful, sweet, calm, like one compared to my like savage one. But I would always say for women, and I was coaching on this last night in my container of self-love school. We were laughing about mother-in-laws. Now, if you've got a phenomenal one, I'm like so happy for you. But I was talking about boundaries and things, and then someone said like, what about a mother-in-law? And I'm like, oh, no, you hold that boundary. Like, you don't have to will that into anything. Like, if there's anyone, so where I'm making it relatable to the listener is if the boundary for me and knowing that bump was like, when does it become enough that someone that is toxic or, you know, not wanting the highest good for you is actually affecting your life? And are you going to continue to allow that to happen? And it could be a friend. It could be a partner. It could be a mother. It could be a mother-in-law. It's like you get to hold the boundary and say enough and no.
I know a lot of our listeners struggle with the desire for visibility and the conflicting fear of the experiences like you've had. So how have you been able to expand your container to receive more visibility, your energetic container in a way, to receive more visibility, to have more eyes on you, and to withstand the dark to the light?
Yeah. This is probably fundamentally the core idea and piece to every single human on earth's breakthrough. I really believe it. I think everyone deserves to be seen. I think we chose this time in history to come back to earth, right? It's such a finite amount of time, and it's so worth it. And we're here for significance and not insignificance, and all of these things that I could riff on for hours itself. And yet we're terrified of what people will think about us, and we're terrified of what someone will say. And I get to be that literal, like, big example of what it's like, what that possibility looks like when you are seen in such an enormous capacity and you have the capacity to hold it all. And what I say to that is always two things. Number one, as a man, woman, alien, unicorn, whatever, you have to know yourself innately. Like, know who the fuck you are. I don't know. I never said, like, can we swear? But
oh yeah, go for it.
I'm partial to it.
You're good.
You have to know yourself. You fundamentally have to know yourself, right? Number two, you have to trust yourself. Number three, you have to back yourself. You don't wait for anyone, permission from anyone, not governments, not society, not best friends, not parents, not partners, no one. You back yourself. And number four, you have to radically love yourself. And when those things occur, know yourself, trust yourself, back yourself, love yourself, when those four pillars click, and that takes work, that's the divinity. That's why you're here, the divinity of life. But when those four things click, that's when you hold the capacity to be seen more, and you will attract more light and dark, 100%. However, at that point, and this is like the most key fundamental aspect to how I live, you cannot become addicted to applause or crippled by the booze. And that's the equilibrium. That's the balance. And so many people, I feel, are actually not as so crippled by the booze. If they actually looked at it, they're more addicted to the applause, and they're hiding behind accidentally, subconsciously, this belief of like, I'm actually just scared to be seen because, like, what if Sally from down the road says something? No, I think it's almost like, what if Sally doesn't love what I say and doesn't like it, right? Or doesn't give me that instant gratification validation of a like or a share or whatever else. Whereas for me, it's like, share your art and share your divinity and share your power and share your truth for the sake of sharing your power and divinity and truth. That's it. You just get to show up, and that's the art of storytelling in a sense to me. And when you can step into that place, and you will step into that place when you know yourself, like trust yourself, back yourself, and love yourself. But when it stops being about this addiction to applause and this crippling of by the booze, you become unstoppable. And I mean that because that is how I live. So it's that piece. It's like your capacity to hold being seen more without that fear of rejection or hate or whatever else. You can hold that because you're not scared of not being liked. You're not scared of being hated. You know who you are. You trust who you are. You back yourself in that, and you love yourself radically along the way. And I always say I do that through, you know, thinking, eating, speaking, moving, earning, fucking, and self-caring like I love myself. And that's the pillar of life for me. And then that's how you step into that piece. And then that's when you become it's humbling when people are like, I love it. I'm so thank you. And you're incredible. And that is humbling. And I always receive everything, because I always say, like, if I reject, oh, no, you know, well, then I'm rejecting myself. But ultimately, it doesn't affect who I am. And it doesn't inspire me to like, oh, okay, they liked that, I'm going to say more of that. It's not about that for me. It's like, I love that landed. And, you know, what did I say at the start? Eat the fish, leave the bones. I'm always like, I don't care. Like, if you like me, I like myself. I don't care if you can hate me. I like myself. I love myself, but I like myself, and I know myself, and I trust myself, and I back myself. And at that point, that's the capacity to be seen, and that's why people see you. That is the magnetism. That is the radiance, because people feel that. You can't fake that.
And you can't fake it.
Yeah. You can say what you want. You can beat the algorithm. You can do whatever. You can use the AI. You can do what you want, but people feel energy. So.
And I love what you said about the applause, because I think that the fearing of the boos, I think that's an illusion that people people fear. I think they actually fear silence.
Yeah.
They fear apathy.
Yeah.
Of just, nobody even engaged. Like, there's no engagement, there's no applause, there's no participation trophy. So the ability to actually just, do you love the art that you're creating with your life? And I love how you explain how each part of your life is so deeply intertwined with artistry. Was that always the case? Or when did that shift, if it wasn't?
No, I'm like, how much time do we have? No, it definitely wasn't. And that's kind of my story, right? I think that's why I'm here on earth, is because that was absolutely not always the case. I was raised, like many, if not most, with a level of trauma, you know, a mother that loved us wildly, but a father that a stepfather that used his fists. Like, I was raised in sexual abuse, violence, all the things. Like, any abuse that you can have was directed upon me as a little girl, unfortunately and sadly. But little girls grow up into wounded women, and that was I. And I spent a life hating myself, absolutely hating myself. And at 22 was when I hit rock bottom. This is like a whole piece and podcast unto itself. But yeah, it's powerful, because people will hear all the words I'm saying and think, oh, I can't be that, or this has happened in my life, or I'm so, you know, overcome and overwhelmed with fear and trauma still. I can't move through that. Yes, you fucking can. You absolutely can. I believe in you. So for me, yeah, I hit rock bottom at 22 because I just had spent 2 decades hating myself and making decisions from that place. So being promiscuous, you know, abusing my body with drugs, abusing my body with alcohol, abusing my body with self-hate, just all of it. Hit rock bottom at 22. So I was diagnosed with a debilitating anxiety condition, drugged to my eyeballs on pharmaceuticals, which I hated. And the night of my rock bottom, it was like 2 doors at the hospital. It was like, you can go through there, which was the mental health, which I respect and love and I'm grateful for. But they said it was like, you know, we're concerned about you. There were scars on my arm, all the things. You're not well. So you can go through there and we can look after you for a hot little minute, you know, and get you better and still send you home on drugs. Or you can basically go home with someone that will sign you out, like that we can trust, and go on the drugs still. And we'll check back in with you in like 4 to 6 weeks, make sure that they're working, which is like, make sure you're a zombie. And we'll go from there. And I was like, oh, the latter, please. Like, I would like to get out of here at this point. And yeah, that night I sat sobbing on my bed, rocking myself back and forth. And I was saying to him, it was my now amazing, he's an incredible man, just not my man, ex-husband. You know, I said to him, I know why I'm like this. Like, I took 100% responsibility for my life in that moment and it changed my life. And I said, I fucking hate myself. Like, I hate myself. I hate who I am. I make these decisions because I hate myself. And I said, so the cure-all to this is love. Like, it's just, it makes sense. It's like, it's the opposite of self-hate is self-love. And I truly believe I wouldn't change a second of my life, not even recently, like all the things that happen, because it consistently triggers me into my next greatest iteration of self. But back then, I'm so grateful for everything that happened, because now I look back and I coach hundreds of thousands of women ultimately, like with my social media, but thousands, tens of thousands in my containers on self-love, because that was my journey. And so from that place of self-hatred, I asked the question, what would loving myself look like instead? What would love choose? And the next day, that's where my whole catch cry of move like you love yourself came from, because he Morgs, bless him, was like, well, what are you going to do? Like, what does that look like? We were clueless. This is 14 years ago now, officially. And it sounds so silly, but it was so potent in its importance of saving my life. I said, well, people that exercise look happy, right? And it was true. Turns out it was very true. And so true. And I'm so grateful for my naivety, because it saved my life. And so the next day I said, I'm gonna get up and move like I love myself. And so began moving like I love myself. And from that, obviously then eating like I love myself, thinking like I love myself, speaking like I love myself, earning like I love myself, etc. And little by little, I healed my life, I changed my life, and I saved my life. And, the woman that you're hearing speak today that's that woman on that journey 14 years later. And, from those decisions, I've now launched that global activewear brand that, the mission is to inspire millions of women around the world to move like they love themselves. And it's just, and all of those pieces in my life have happened because of what did happen to me. And so, yeah, conviction and convenience, Lisa Nichols says it, will never live on the same street. So it was that I'm going to have conviction for my life. I'm going to have conviction to change it. I'm going to have conviction to love myself, know myself, trust myself, and back myself, and go for this like my life depends on it, because all of ours does. So
my journey to self-love also started through movement when I found Pilates when I was 19, and I was severely bulimic, a lot of similar experiences growing up as well. And the just love of just like, oh my gosh, like I actually feel good in my body after exercise. Like it was like night and day, and just the ability to move. And I think we, in such a sedentary society where like so much is done on a computer or on a phone, like it's very easy to confine yourself to a chair. And as you've grown, I know you have a commitment of moving like you love yourself every day.
Mm-hmm.
What does that look like as your life has gotten busier and more complex and more businesses? Has it changed and evolved since how you were before?
It absolutely hasn't. God, like I know they're going to think, no, it absolutely hasn't. And I do speak about this all the time, because I'm asked it all the time as people watch beautifully. And I love it. Like people watch my life expand and my self expand.
Mm-hmm.
And they ask that question around how are you holding the space for everything in your life, but still doing your runs in the morning and your weight session and your ocean swimming and your whatever else I choose to do. I've done 2 half Ironmans and triathlons and everything. And for me, it's simple, because I'm like, without that, there is no point to me.
Mm-hmm.
Like to move and to think and to speak and to earn and to fuck and to self-care and to eat like I love myself is the beginning and the middle and the end. And that becomes my highest priority every single day, non-negotiable, before I try to pour myself out to the world. Like I have to pour into myself. And already I'm having the conversations because, babies will be not soon, but like they're coming. And then so I started to have the conversation. I'm not a mother yet. And that's important to say, because I know women here and they're like, how is she doing all this? I'm not a mother. So my companies are my babies. But I have already begun the conversations with Ryan around, baby, when we have babies, my commitment to self still will be number one priority, because I cannot be I just know I've watched thousands of women lose themselves in the identity of motherhood and giving all of themselves to that child, which we keep them alive. I honor that so wildly, but then wake up 6 months, 12 months, 18 months, 2 years, 3 years later in my containers, burnt out, exhausted in their masculine energy, broken. And I'm putting the pieces back together again with moving thinking, eating, speaking, earning, fucking self-caring, like they love themselves, to find themselves again, to become that best mother. So for me, no matter, and I'm using this example because, 90% of us that listen to podcasts are mothers, but the work never ends in this, and the importance of it only expands the bigger our life expands. And that could be with businesses, that could be with babies, that could be with our bank accounts. But, the other week when I had the biggest, everything was due. I had every deadline literally on earth. I was launching Self-Love School, which was the biggest I've ever done. I was launching my second collection for my company. We're at the beginning of a bull run. I have a crypto company as well. And I was like, this is a lot. And I was like, I wrote a to-do list, which was 3 pages long, of literally like enormous tasks. Like it wasn't like, I don't know, send that email. It was like, get that entire back-end system process set up.
Yep.
And instead I looked at it and I was like, this is perfect. I had like 2 weeks to do it. And I was like, so I'm going to take a day off. I'm going to go date myself, because I know the woman that needs to come at this next 2 weeks needs to have the capacity and space to do it. And now, did I have time? This is like the switch up that I always say. Did I have time to do that? Abso-fucking-lutely not. And like people around me were like, you are insane. And I was like, no, because do I not have time, or is it not a priority? Am I not a priority for myself? I am the greatest priority to myself and for myself. So I was like, no, I absolutely have time, because I have the priority to do it. So I went and did a date day, and it was the best. I took a massage. I went to soak bath house. I had a magnesium bath. I took myself on a solo champagne date. And then lo and behold, I, went into the very next day and worked 2 weeks almost straight, launched the biggest self-love school I ever have, launched this almost sold out collection. Life is just beautiful because I honor and prioritize myself and that capacity to still move like I love myself. And and eat like I love myself and think like I love myself, all the things. And instead of saying, I just don't have the time, like so many of us, I say, it's just absolutely a priority for me. And when it's a priority, you find the time. And I use that with mums all the time, because I'm like, what's the priority in your life? Oh, my kids. Incredible. So if your kid called you now and was sick at school and you were at work and you had a zillion things to do, would you go and could you go and pick them up? Of course I would. They're like, I'd drop everything. I'm like, so why the fuck are you not doing that for yourself? Like, that's the level of commitment to self that you need to have, kids or not kids, in my opinion.
I completely agree, as a mother of 2, of a 6 and a 2-year-old. So completely agree on that. And I would add to the list, sleep like you love yourself as well.
Yeah. And heal like you love yourself.
And heal is a huge one, especially post giving birth and all that. Like, being able to take the time and have the support network around. Like, I have such respect and mad respect for single mothers who do it without a partner, because my husband is the greatest partner that I could imagine. And when I met him, I was like, baby daddy written all over him.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
You
So
smell it on him.
I just smell it. And I was like, oh, I knew. And since he was older, I said, well, you have to want kids if you're going to be with me. And he was like, yep, I could see having kids with you. I said, great. We're going to name them. So done. Name them.
This is literally, my story is right, which I love.
Yeah. And it's that decisiveness. And I think that's one of the things that mostly women I've seen, and just in my own coaching experience, having a coaching business for 9 years, women struggle with decisiveness and assertiveness. And how do you borderline on assertive versus being bitchy?
Ooh, that's a good question. Honestly, and I'm like, I always say it comes back to when you know yourself, and it's always the intention behind it. There's not a cell in my body that is bitchy or that judges or would make that decision, like hold her boundaries from a, quote unquote bitchy perspective. I love that word because, right, we always use it, but I love it in the sense of like the power of activation in a woman. But it's knowing the intention behind it. Like I know my boundaries and I have to hold my boundaries. And so when I do that, it is assertion, and it comes from that powerful, healed masculine energy of decisiveness, of structures, of systems, of boundaries, of leadership. And my intention behind all that is love and power and peace for myself, for my companies, for my life, for my love. And so I think really it's just knowing who you are, but absolutely understanding the intention behind the no, the intention behind the yes. the intention behind, the decision making and decisiveness of, which really honestly, I always say realistically is just boundaries all of the time in a sense, comes from that. What is the intention behind it?
So as someone with such firm boundaries and with such a beautiful combination of like masculine, divine masculine boundaries, healed feminine, I think a lot of times women who have been in domestic violence situations, and I know you have, I have, like those experiences where it's shocking, like you as a strong, empowered, beautiful, successful woman had that happen. Like, how did you navigate that?
How does that happen, first and foremost?
How does that happen?
and I wonder how, I always say, like, I never planned, obviously I'm not an ambassador of anything, and so still not DV, but I will always forever use my voice when it pertains to anything of extreme importance, and that is DV. So I love that you have asked this, because I do think we end domestic violence when we shine a spotlight on it. And statistically speaking, there are women right now that are listening to this podcast that are in DV, which is just heartbreaking. And so when we talk as well, when you're so beautifully asking me the questions, Kimberly, this was only back in 2022, and we're recording this in 2024. And this is, again, you can get me on and we can go, because it's a whole other podcast, and not about DV, but actually about wounds. And so what has happened, obviously you just heard my back end story. I hit my rock bottom, changed my whole life, ate, thought, moved. I did all of the things. I healed all of the events that occurred in my life, forgiveness, therapy. I did all the things, right? The right things, without ever recognizing, understanding, or realizing I had never gone back to the core wound as a woman. So the core wound that I carried, which was then I had continued to carry my entire life up until I healed it back in 2022. It was the core wound. And so what happened for me, what happened as a child, and it wasn't my whole childhood. There are certain things that happen to us as little girls that crack our love timeline. And so for me, it was like certain big events. And again, it wasn't, for me, it wasn't like the abuse from the abuser. It was a moment for me where I remember I was in a Papa San chair. I'll go this deep. This is probably people are like, wow, this is how honest she is. But I remember I had severe chronic childhood asthma, and my abuser was from the church, so he always got access to me that way. And then, would ask for me on school holidays and things like that, and I would be given over. So, but I missed church on this Sunday. Obviously, my body was trying to keep me safe. I had one of the worst panic attacks. I would have been like 6. And so I didn't have to go to church. So I didn't have to see him, which was like the best thing on earth. And I remember being in hospital thinking as a little girl, if I could just have a panic attack or an asthma attack, every Sunday, like I don't have to go to church. This will fix everything. And I'll never forget, anyway, I got taken home after I was in the hospital, came home, and my stepdad had brought all the other kids home, my siblings. And in walked my abuser, his name's Adrian. In walked Adrian, my abuser, with Bob. And I was like 6 years old and I was in the Papa San, and I'm like, what is going on? And he came up and he prayed over me. This was the moment. So it wasn't actual abuse itself. He prayed over me, saying it's the devil and like the asthma. And I just remember, and I identified this, 18 months ago in some breath work, this core memory became unlocked. I remember looking up, and my mum was there, he was there, and my stepdad, looking up at the adults in my life who were meant to protect me, and they weren't. And I remember, like, just in that moment, I don't even mean again with the abuse, in that moment of like, he's in the home praying over me and I just avoided him, but he's still here. And I remember thinking, I am never going to be safe. I am unsafe. Crack, core wound. So for me, as then a young woman and a woman who then continued to heal her life and move and eat and think and speak and heal the events of my life, what I had never gone back to do is take that inner little girl that was still inside of me, that's 6 years old, and take her by the hand and remind her and tell her and heal her and say, actually, honey, love is safe and you are safe. And it's okay to be loved now, fully, completely, wholly healed. And I'd never done that. And I'd never heard of this work. I'm like in the work, queens. Like I am everywhere in the work, speak on stages, I do the things, but no one had ever, no, it's no one's responsibility. I had never come across this work, this core wounds work. So that came in my sphere because, to cut to DV and how it happened and why it happened, I'd left my, incredible ex-husband of 16 years. We'd been married 16 years, but he was still a wound mate. I had still absolutely attracted, held, and continued in that relationship, fully wounded. And we loved each other and we were best mates, and it was great. Like, we had a phenomenal marriage and traveled the world on, but he didn't work. Like, I was the masculine, I was the provider, the protector, and that was my love is unsafe. That was the wound. Love is unsafe, so I can't rely on the masculine to provide and protect me. And so that was what I was doing, right, with him. And then it cut to, I was like, I knew I was misaligned because I'd done so much work, and I was like, ended the marriage, went into a cocoon of healing, still never identifying, acknowledging, or understanding this work around the core wound, and then cue the narcissist. And again, I attracted him, right? Ultimately, I allowed it because now, oh my God, love is so safe. I knew the red flags, but I was ignoring every single one because love is unsafe. And so that was my wound. I am unlovable and love is unsafe. And so I attracted him from that wound. And then, because that was what was safe for my nervous system. And then, it ended in the night of DV. There was so many red flags along the way. And yeah, when I knew that something was wrong, I was like, I'm such a high performer. I accept nothing less than excellence in every area of my life. Why am I allowing myself to date this, quite frankly and unapologetically, fuckhead? And I got a coach. I went and power of proximity, have coaches in your life. I went and got a coach who specialized in psych trauma work as well. And that was a conversation I had, just being honest. I jumped on Zoom and I'm like, I am a high performer. And she was like, oh, honey, you've just got wounds. I'm like, no, I don't. What? I'm healed. What are you talking about? Hey. And she went actually through it. She goes, well, what's happened? And I went through all my trauma and stuff. And she goes, no, you are actually very much, you've got no charge and no electricity in your body when it pertains to any event that's occurred in your life. You are healed, but you've actually never dealt with regulating your nervous system of that inner child from when the crack happened. And I was like, well, blow me down. And so healed it, got to work on the breath work. And ladies, to be honest, it's a lot of body work. It's identifying where the trauma's held, releasing it, and changing the thing. So for me, I went from subconsciously believing my little girl that love is unsafe and I am unlovable to consciously, as the Anna at 36, going back within, finding my little girl, my inner child. And she was honestly huddled in the corner somatically, sobbing, terrified. And I remember when I found her in a inner child meditation, and you can literally just find these on Spotify, I wept. I gutturally wept on my bed. And I was like, I am so fucking sorry. I have left you behind. I have abandoned you my whole life. And it's safe, my love. You are safe now. It's safe. You are loved and worthy and accepted. And come on, I got to catch you up, sis. The Anna today. And so I went on that journey. I did some breathwork sessions, a lot of body work, and I just changed the story. And I consciously changed my story to I am lovable and love is safe. And I put that on my mirrors and I got to work on that. But what happened along the way was I started to absolutely detract and pull back and break up from the narcissist, because you can never hold a man like that, a wounded man like that, when you do become the hidden feminine. And I was repulsed by him. But he was very psychopathic. And unfortunately, the night that I was like, get out. And ladies, if you're in it still, learn from this as well. The most dangerous time for a woman is when she's trying to leave. And that was my story. I became part of the statistic. I literally packed his stuff, put it out, locked him outside. And then he got back in. I went to bed. I was brute force. He'd smashed my phone. I was stuck in the house. I woke up. He was just on a tear. He knew he'd lost control. He'd lost control and power because I was done, and he obviously could sense that. And yeah, smashed my face in, split my lip open and strangled me. And then I had to play the game, ultimately. I am going to record a big podcast on this. I've got a violence restraining order against him, so I'm safe to speak and all the things. And I would anyway. It's my story and my truth. So like I said, we end domestic violence when we shine a spotlight on it. And again, I hold no shame, right? And I want women to hear this. Like if this becomes the most pertinent part of the podcast for someone, even if one other woman, has gone through this and has actually been hiding because she's ashamed of, she attracted a man like that or that happened to her and she's just so ashamed of it. Don't be. It happened to me too, but there's no shame in that and there's no blame in that and there's no guilt in that. And so, yeah, I got out, I healed, and now it's like that's the real woman that you see today. This, like, who I really am in the last 18 months is like healing those wounds, becoming that, throwing myself out of a plane. That was another big reason. I was like, holy, if I can survive that, I can survive throwing myself out of a plane. And that was a big part of my healing as well. So yeah, circle back to what do I fear? Nothing. Because
I love that.
Yeah, nothing.
I bungee jumped after my ex, so yeah. Get it. Just blew myself off. I was like, I don't feel like, completely skydiving, but if a cord's attached to me and there's a string, and it's going to pop me up, most liberating experience of my life. I have it recorded on some Palm Pilot somewhere.
I love that. I still prefer skydiving.
Really?
Oh, 100%.
Yeah? What's the difference in the, 15, is it 15,000, 35,000 feet that you're jumping from?
15,000. No, you jumped out of a plane. Because I said, by the way, everyone, because I'm now like, I can't go on a plane without a parachute. I feel so safe when I have my parachute now. And I said this to an instructor when I did my last jump. I'm like, oh, it's such a shame you can't take a parachute on a big plane just in case it goes down. I'll survive. And he was like, no, babe, if you open the door at 30,000 feet, you're minced because of the speed and the height. And I was like, oh, that makes sense. But no, why I prefer skydiving is for me, and it's not this, you don't need to go do this to experience this, but for me, nothing has ever felt like throwing myself out of a plane at 15,000 feet of just total liberation. And to survive, you have to actually be in your body. So and this is the first jumps, the first 9 jumps you do. You're by you jump solo. You're not strapped to anyone, but 2 instructors, well, actually 2 and then 1 for I think 2 jump in Australia anyway for the first 4, and then it becomes 1. So you've got someone in the sky sort of tracking you until you pull your chute and you're on your own again. But for me, you have to be embodied. And I think there's no greater divinity on earth than that true authentic power of just being completely embodied in your body. And so, yeah, I love meeting my edge up there, and I just love pushing it further.
So with business, what's your edge now that you're pushing?
Just total industry disruption. I know eyes are on. I've created a new business model that's never been done in the world with crypto, and so Web3 and Web2, and sharing 50% of profits from my global activewear company with holders of my, the crypto company, the NFT. It's never been done in the world. And so to have the audacity to firstly dream that up and secondly pull that off, I'm just the first airdrop of profit is coming. It will be this year. So that's my edge. And I still have to, it's got to get done, right? And there's going to be, there's still work to do, but the edge is meeting myself where I said that I would. And I was so terrified to do this. I knew how big the dream was when it got placed on my heart. And I'm 95% there now. And so my edge is doing it, completing it. And then honestly, the sky is not even my limit.
Well, of course, we've already surpassed the sky.
Yeah.
So that's amazing. I am so excited to watch you shine and go forth and conquer and just dominate and be such the example that you are. And I've loved and enjoyed following your stories and following you throughout my time in Australia when I stumbled upon you thanks to the Katrina Ruth referring me to you.
Oh, get out of town. I love that.
Yeah. Queens support queens. So like,
absolutely.
I love your audacity and the dreams that you back yourself so fully, regardless of circumstances, and the healings of those wounds. I know that there is a woman who is listening to this who may feel like she has all the things solved and all the events. I want to backtrack to who you were at 22 and what was the first personal development or growth or mindset shifting book that you read that like game changer changed your life. And then fast forward to healing the core wound piece and going into that level of depth. What was the key transformational piece for that?
Yeah, easy answer. 22, part of my story was I picked up one of my first personal development books, which I don't know if I could read it now. I have picked it back up and I'm like, it's just too basic for me. But then it changed the absolute trajectory of my life, which was Tony Robbins' Awaken the Giant Within. And I always say it wasn't necessarily the book, but it was the actions that I took at the end of every single chapter. So I was like, I treated that book and the exercises in it like my life depended on it, because it did, kind of did. So that was the book that set the trajectory off. Cut to, 14 years of work. And you got to remember in that time as well. So when this event occurred with my ex and I attracted the narcissist within that relationship, that was all of 2021 and half of 2022. So it was like 16, 15 months of recently. And at that point, when I realized it was taking 100% responsibility, as I always do in all my life. And then it was hiring a coach. Like I always say, get a good coach, whatever is available to you in whatever capacity that you are at. But ultimately, the thing that healed me fundamentally was that inner child work, but I accessed that through breath work. So I always say I'm an advocate of all modalities, including talk therapy, but sitting on a couch and talking about my problems for me was never going to heal me, right? It was never going to work. I had to access, we all do, the trauma trapped in my tissues, the memories trapped in my muscles. I had to go back and find her, that little girl, at that moment in time when her love timeline cracked, which is when I was like 6. Take her by the hand, find her within me, because we've all got her. And all of us, when we're reacting and responding and it feels not us, like hysterical, or we're upset, or I don't ever say triggered, I say activated. When we're activated in that way, it's not us. It's not the 36, 42, 54, 21-year-old that's responding. It's the little girl. It's the inner child that is feeling abandoned and feeling hurt and feeling scared and feeling unworthy and feeling unloved. And she's not feeling listened to, and she's not feeling loved, and she's not feeling worthy. That's the little one that we have to heal. And so that was done for me through breath work. And I just found I've done breath work with a range of different practitioners. I don't ever recommend one necessarily. I always say to everyone, go and find the most local one in your area, because breath is life. It made sense to me. I hadn't done it before then either. I'd watched friends do it. I'd watched a friend launch one of the biggest O2 breathworks in the world. She's her and her partner are some of the biggest breath practitioners in the world. And I still never did it. And then it was the breath work. So it wasn't a book is what I want to say. It wasn't a podcast. It wasn't a book at that stage. And that was the greatest, most transformational, deepest, most important healing of my life, 2022. So, and that was body work in the end. It wasn't a book. It was body work. And I think that's the piece that most of us, I know especially for me, was missing, was I was doing all the things, but I hadn't gone back, found that little girl within, taken her by the hand, literally, in a meditation, found her, take her by the hand, see her. And I keep my baby photos, I keep little 6-year-old Anna at the front of all my diaries now, just to remind me all the time she's loved and safe. And I tell her that consistently.
I love that. And I can attest to the power of bodywork, because when I was pregnant with my second child in Australia, that was when I was getting my breathwork certification for trauma healing. And it was game changer. Yeah, it was amazing. It was just, and it's something that I've incorporated into my coaching, so that it's not just top down. I love what you say about it's the body. And one of the things that healed me when I was 19, 20, 21, it was cranial sacral therapy. And it was having body work done on me and through me, where I was actually I could feel the removal of the hands from my body that was still trapped in my tissue. I could feel like the reburning of certain parts of me that like had burned. Like I found it through a client of mine, but I felt it heal. And I went to the doctor the next day. He said, "You're not going to have a scar because it physically healed the tissue." So there is such power in the body that just can be unlocked.
I just like head to toe, I just got covered in goosebumps, because I mean, there's so much science that's catching up. And it's not always been there. It's been there for a longish time, but the science that's catching up now around the body just follows the brain, right? But ultimately all of our traumas and all of our memories are trapped in our muscles and tissues. And so if we are not feeling it, we are not healing it. And so that's our work. That's our greatest work. And life's going to happen. Life's still going to happen to me. There'll be moments and traumas and things that pop up, come up. I go through, I grow through. And it's that commitment though now to, always making sure my inner little girl is loved and safe. And she knows that. And then always feeling what's coming up for me to heal it, to move it up and out of my body 100%. So it's not trapped.
Anna, I have loved our conversation, and I would love to shift gears into a little bit of rapid fire to wrap this up.
Let's do it.
Let's do it. Okay. So who is your favorite female character in a book or a movie, and why?
Lulu Dallas from The Fifth Element, 100%. It's like my favorite movie of all time. But she is the literal physical, spiritual embodiment of love. And I believe as the feminine, we are all here to become love, be love, receive love, and give love. So,
what woman?
Saved the world.
Did save the world?
You saved the world through being love. Like, come on. So that.
Amazing. What woman, alive or alive in her time, would you want to trade places with just for a day to be in her body, see how she experienced the world in her time?
I think the first woman that landed who I love is obviously Maya Angelou. But I just think, for me, I know it might sound corny or cliche or just, I don't know, but for me, I'm like, there is honestly no one else that I would rather be in the entire world but myself. And
even if it was just for a day?
No. I think maybe like, I would probably love to trade places with a man just to see what it's like to have a dick. Like, more than anything. Let's be real. I'm like, if it's rapid fire, like that's probably what I would more do. But yeah, I mean, Maya Angelou, I think I would love to feel the genius of her poetry. And I would love to understand like the depth of where that came from. But I also love the secrecy and magic of that. So
what's your morning routine to set you up for success?
I wake up. I always say I eat, think, move, speak, fuck, earn, and self-care like I love myself. So for me, it's an embodied practice of movement, first and foremost, non-negotiable no matter what. Even it might be a quick run, it could be a stretch, whatever feels good. I always only follow what feels good. And then my gratitudes, some journaling, and I read my compelling life vision statement. So the life that I am manifesting, calling forth, living into is the very first thing that I read every single morning. And then I start my day.
Yes. What's your nightly routine to set you up for a successful morning?
Always classical music as I shower by candlelight. It's just the most beautiful, like, nervous system unwinding regulation. And then reading. And it's super simple. Sometimes if I'm really wound up, I will always like put magnesium spray on the bottom of my feet. Like just beautiful things. But I'm also very sensual. So I'm big into, I've got a beautiful self-sensuality or coupled sensuality. I'm very into like cuddles and touching. And I just think it's so stunning for our nervous system. So in a healthy, healed relationship, let me say that.
Yes.
But yeah, so sensuality of a night and a morning, and always classical music with a candle, like shower by candlelight, no lights in the house. So always only by like salt lamp or candle or lamp.
That sounds amazing. I'm going to give that a try. That sounds awesome. What do you define to be your queendom?
For me, the meaning of my queendom is just a woman living in her true, sovereign, authentic power. and living life so radically, authentically, and truthfully. And as a woman who knows herself, trusts herself, backs herself, and loves herself. And from that, my entire life springs forth, and I am creating empires. So that is my queendom.
I have a feeling I'm going to know the answer to, I already know the answer to this question, but tickle my fancy. And how do you crown yourself?
Well, I crown myself through my self-love, like every single day in every single way. And I really do. It's like an anointment of self through my self-love practices of moving like I love myself, thinking like I love myself, speaking like I love myself, eating like I love myself, earning fucking self-caring like I love myself. And every day that it's just that firm crowning of self, pouring into myself, loving myself, knowing myself, trusting myself, backing myself. And then from that, the world gets my overflow.
Phenomenal. I had a feeling that was what it was going to be.
I could
completely surprised me. Like jumped out of a plane. That's how you crown yourself.
Yeah.
It has been such a pleasure having you on the podcast. And where can we find you? How can we work with you? How can we be a part and contribute to the empire that you're building?
Come and play over, and I'm just an Instagram gal. So come and play. I've got a website, I've got all the things, but it's all on my Instagram. So I run separate Instagrams for all of the companies. So if you're into crypto, it's all linked in my personal bio. So just come find me and then you'll find everything else. But at @thereal_Anna Rose.
Amazing. Thank you so much for being on the show. And as always, own your throne, mind your business, because your reign is now.
Thank you so much for tuning in today. If what you heard resonated with you, be sure to subscribe and start creating a bigger impact now by sharing this with a friend. Just by doing that one simple act of kindness, you are creating a royal ripple to support more people in their sovereignty. And if you're not already following on social media, connect with me everywhere at crownyourself.now for more inspiration. I am so excited to connect with you in the next episode. And in the meantime, go out there and create a body, business, and life that rules. Because today, you crown yourself.